Let's see what the headlines are this morning across Nigeria. The papers are saying different things, really catchy headlines here and there. And I have with me in the studio lawyer Jide Ologun to help us make sense of some of the headlines we'll be having this morning. Jide, good morning.
Good morning.
Nice to see you. And happy independence.
Anniversary.
God bless Nigeria, like you always say. All right. Let's start from Daily Trust. Daily Trust is where we start from this morning, and it says anxiety in Kano, Sokoto, as tribunals decide on Ganduje Tambawal today. And the supporters go spiritual, relocate to Abuja. All right, that's what you see on the front page of the Daily Trust. From there, let's go to the blueprint. The blueprint is focusing on xenophobic attacks, and that's from South Africa. And he said Buhari, 3 governors, 7 ministers, others off to South Africa. Okay, this meeting has been long scheduled, and the president, it's time for him to go to meet his counterpart in Pretoria. Now from Blueprint, let's go to the Daily Times. On free speech, mixed reactions trail Buhari's threat, and senior lawyers, others caution against gagging Nigerians. A statement is in compliance with the Constitution. I guess spokespersons of the government are saying that. All right, from the Daily Times, let's go to the News Direct. And it talks about the president. He said Buhari disowns third-term campaigner, says he won't amend Constitution. Heads for South Africa with 10 ministers over xenophobia. Okay. These are all interesting headlines, Jide. I wonder where we start from right now, but I think let's start with this insinuation of third-term issue. Now, the point there is, in Nigeria, there are some issues that it seems one should come to terms with, that these things are concluded, forgone. In fact, it's like it's signed, it's delivered. The key has been thrown into the ocean where you don't even have to talk about it anymore. And the issue of third term is one of those which Nigerians should, or people feel Nigerians should come to terms with these things. As Nigeria cannot have a third term except the Constitution passes through that, that process to say, Constitution passes through that, that process to say, okay, either we have a third term or we have a single term of maybe 10 years or 20 years, or whatever it is. What do you make of this, those calling for third term again?
I believe it reflects the fact that we don't drive the governance system on the platform of visionary purpose. Okay. Because if you go by management by objectives, like in a relay race, you have your own part of it to play, and there are tasks given to you that you must accomplish within that space of time, because I believe that we must have been able to look at what can be achieved within 4 years before putting that in place. And of course, it's quite generous to have 2 times of 4 years, talking about 8 years. And a lot can be done in 8 years. But in a society where the governance process is distracted, we're paying more attention to politicking than to main essence, like the Constitution stipulates, the welfare and the security of the people, creating an enabling environment, creating economic fortunes and prosperity. You have cases like this. I mean, look at what is going on in Kano, Sokoto, because the tribunal has to come to a conclusion. We are mobilizing policemen, people are going spiritual. If we channel this energy to developing the country, ensuring we have electricity, ensuring we have good roads, ensuring that by now, in the last 5 years, we probably have 2 national airlines flying and bringing in money. That right now, the 4 refineries are working at maximum capacity. We don't need to import fuel and that we have driven our economy in a way that we have not gone borrowing to the point that we now owe $9 billion. It's $90 billion or something. So when you look at the fact that we pay more attention to politics than governance, you cannot but find situations of third term. But then, going back to content analysis, those who are driving this should learn from precedents. It hardly works in Nigeria. Chief Olusegun Obasanjo tried it.
Exactly, it didn't work.
It never worked. But you see, again, now that the presidency is denying involvement in this, we can bring in the concept of sycophants, the praise singers, the main beneficiaries of a non-performing governance system. Because when the citizens are complaining of insecurity, not having the appropriate infrastructure, and that they need more from governance benefits, there are some who are benefiting. I keep asking this question, for example, who are those benefiting from the 11 trillion naira that was spent on fuel subsidy, importing fuel into this country? Who are those sponsoring the bandits? You know, who are those bringing in? I told us that recently 6 mine-resistant military vehicles were allegedly smuggled into this country, intercepted by the customs and the police, and it's right now in the country. Why do we need them? Are they for industrializing Nigeria? You know, so
well,
there are those sycophants
yes,
who must want to retain someone in office, but carry out their...
In all of those, government is the one who has the wherewithal, the apparatus, the platform, the network, the instrument to have information around all of these issues. And certainly we know that there are areas where government is handling where they don't have to be public. What government is doing and all of that. It's not the detail of everything government is doing that the public knows. But the point there is, going back to what we're discussing earlier on, it is said that at least the president knows better by, tackling it headlong and not allowing the issue to spill on and on and on until it becomes a topic, a national topic, before he says
I think
no.
Where we are right now, it appears that some are more comfortable with keeping the people busy, which issues, like you rightly brilliantly mentioned, should not even come to the public domain. I mean, I keep saying it. If I visit a restaurant, my business is to be served good meal. By the time I start stepping into the kitchen to find out how
the ingredients were put in and what went into,
must be going wrong. And I think that is the case here. I've said it. I mean, I'm not comfortable with kings going to Aso Villa to demand for security. It's a sign of failure. You see, we should be reading, for example, yesterday, we should be parading, not even talking about achievements. You see, the social media is there, the different platforms.
And to even talk about these things, you don't have to force yourself to put out there. If these things are there, the social media now, like you mentioned, would drive it. Naturally would drive, because it becomes headline by itself. If the structures are there, if there are investment and all of those things are all in place. For instance, the second Niger bridge, we've been seeing pictures of the beginning of that construction and all of that on social media. It's all over the place. The government doesn't have to put it out there to say, okay, Nigerians, I started construction of the second Niger bridge and all of that. It's driving itself. So that is what Nigerians are saying.
Yeah, that is
if
why
these things are in place, the rest will take care of itself.
You don't argue with good results. I mean, like you brilliantly mentioned now, if today we have consistent power supply, and
Nigerians
today,
will talk about it.
Those who are eligible have their prepaid meters. If today we have improved on an employment rating, if today dollar is about 120 naira, if today you can step into a public hospital and get treated, if today all children who should be in school are in school, if today we are paying comfortably 60,000 naira minimum wage, if today we refine for West African countries, we don't need to argue and be flexing muscle. These things will speak for themselves. I mean, as we sit in this beautiful studio, I know that China is laying the last structure of the steel for constructing the longest bridge across the sea. You see, we are connected with great things happening across the world. We know that Qatar has built, an air-conditioned stadium ahead of the forthcoming games in 2022. So these things are there, and you have this free publicity. But what do we have to publicize? And that is when we start becoming defensive. Insecurity, banditry,
and we struggle to let people know we're doing
corruption,
something.
You know, 2023 agenda and things that should be secondary, now occupying the primary stage.
Jide Ologun, thank you so much for your insight into all of these issues we've talked about today. Thank you very much.
God bless Nigeria.
Right. You're watching TVC Breakfast. We are streaming live on YouTube. You can connect with us on Twitter using the hashtag TVC Breakfast. There's still to come on the show. Now it's time to take a look at stories making the headlines in Nigerian newspapers this morning. And I have with me in the studio journalist Dare Odufowokon and lawyer Jide Ologun. Gentlemen, thank you for coming on TVC Breakfast. And I think it's safe to say happy Independence Anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
All right, let's head straight to the papers now. And I begin with the Daily Trust. Anxiety in Kano, Sokoto as tribunals decide on Gandunji. Tambuwal today, supporters go spiritual, relocate to Abuja. And to the front page of the Blueprint, xenophobic attacks. Buhari, 3 governors, 7 ministers, others off to South Africa. We'll be looking at that story shortly. And on the front page of the Daily Times, free speech, mixed reactions trail Buhari's threat. Senior lawyers, others caution against gagging Nigerians. Statement is in compliance with Constitution. And on the front page of the Nigerian News Direct, Buhari disowns third-term campaigners, says he won't amend Constitution, heads for South Africa with 10 ministers over xenophobia. On the front page of the Daily Sun, Nigeria at 59, row over Buhari's broadcast, PDP Falai Ozekome, others hit President. Junaid Ebute Ngige Mohammed applaud. And finally, on the front page of the Vanguard, economy, Buhari's exports, others list options for government. Nigeria must innovate, commit or die, Soludo. Mental discipline to execute plans lacking, says Rwani. No government exists without security of lives, property, Peter Obi. No progress without electricity, Gupta, globalization expert. All right, gentlemen, we'll go to the front page of the Blueprint, the story on speaking about the president's trip to South Africa today and on xenophobic attacks. Now, when that incident happened, a cross-section of Nigerians applauded the president's decisiveness when he said, well, Nigerians should return, and there was evacuation of Nigerians. And now he is going to meet with the president to make a decision, perhaps to look at how to end xenophobic attacks. So what do you think should be at the front burner of the discussion? I'll start with you, Dari.
On the front burner should be a way to ensure the safety of lives and properties of Nigerians should they decide to stay in South Africa. You see, we are African brothers, and I am not for the extreme position that Nigerians should finally and totally leave South Africa.
Will that even be possible?
I've heard people canvass such positions, but South Africans live in Nigeria. Mm-hmm. They do business and they add values to what we do here too. We are not about to ask them to leave. So, yes, there are issues. Mr. President should discuss with his South African counterparts, find a way, lasting solutions now. If this issue is getting to a point where 2 presidents have to sit down, don't forget, some eminent Nigerians, too, including former President Olusegun Obasanjo, have met with the South African president. And I'm sure the issue of xenophobic attack will be part of the discussions. Other African leaders have met with South African presidents. What are the issues? Why is it difficult for South Africans and Nigerians to cohabit in South Africa peacefully? Are there issues of provocations from either side? Are there ways this can be addressed? And people can be told in clear terms, this is how we want you to cohabit. I think Mr. President's visiting the South African president is very timely and still very much necessary. I read on social media some people complaining that Buhari never wastes any opportunity to travel. And I should that. I should that in the sense that when this broke and he sent a delegation, we complained that
he did not go.
did not go. Now he's saying that, and way back then I remember them agreeing that at social time we will meet.
Yes.
They wanted to allow for the various committees, delegations here and there to do their work. Then the two presidents will have facts and figures to work. Don't forget that even the South African president set up committees to look at that development. Now he's going, we are complaining that he's traveling again. Sometimes, like I used to say, I really don't know what we expect from the leadership. I really don't know.
Complex Nigerians, Jide. But then what do you think should be the focus of this discussion now? Like he has said, several committees put together, those that went to look at the situation of things on the part of South Africa and on the part of Nigerians. They had come to Nigeria to apologize. And now we are having the president go there. What should be the focus of the discussion? And how firm should our president be this time?
We approach it from the continental level. You know, like he mentioned, there are foundational issues. Right now, some African countries are plagued by poverty. You see, Rwandans are not chasing Nigerians out of Rwanda. So they say that a hungry man is an angry man. So
Absolutely.
How can we economically maximize the potentials we have as a continent? If you look at the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, there is provision for partnership. You see, we have enormous resources. So how can we harness? Because if you look at the case of South Africa, we have this element of citizens that are frustrated because they are not economically benefiting from the society. The same thing that prompted our own children to migrate to South Africa. And again, I want us to realize that some of those who came back from South Africa are waiting to return to South Africa because they've started a new lease of life over there. So I expect that we also find a way of cohabiting peacefully within our continent. Enough of these narratives, and that has to do with the mindset reorientation. We need to emphasize the power of education, making the basic amenities available, particularly in developing the minds of the citizens and making them to engage positively. And if we do all this, I think the continent Africa will come out better. And of course, like we said, you know, they also met at the United Nations General Assembly in New York, but I think there wasn't enough time to engage some of these issues. Nigeria must be respected, and back home also, as a follow-up on these visitations, whether to New York or to South Africa, how can we develop our own economy? And that is why I appreciate the advice given by Bismarck Rewane, by Soludo to the president now, that we must be committed, we must be innovative, we must have the mental approach to implementing policies that will move us forward as a nation.
Because we have limited time, I want to pick it up from the point of view of Nigeria being respected. The president is going to engage with Nigerians in the town hall meeting, and you know there has been accusations of some Nigerians carrying out illicit businesses and all of those. That discussion will be key on how we, carry on our businesses there. What kind of engagement do you want the president to have with the Nigerians there? Indeed, they are looking at the protection of their own lives and safety, but then they should also look at
I said it earlier, and I said there were complaints, both sides.
Yes.
So in resolving this issue, in ensuring respect for Nigeria, we must also ensure respect for South Africa, who are the host. Nigerians in South Africa are guests. We're only enjoying the grace of Pan-Africanism. That, oh, we are African brothers. You should see us as your brother. But there is a Yoruba adage that says, a farmland cannot belong to the father and the son and still not have boundaries. So there will be boundaries. We must respect boundaries. Respect, they say, is reciprocal. Nigerians, when the president meets them, he should tell them, respect the boundaries, the space of your host. There are certain things we do here in Nigeria that we take for granted. It's normal for Nigerians to throw party 5 times a week.
It's our
We don't
lifestyle.
see it as anything here. We are very sociable people. We are people who like to enjoy our lives. We work hard and we party hard. But when you get to South Africa, is that their culture too? Do they see it that way? It may not be wrong legally, constitutionally, even physically, but it may just be morally wrong in their own eyes. And we need to respect their space. Then when we talk about people who engage in illicit businesses,
Quickly.
back home, you also cannot engage in illicit business without being arrested. So when you go to other people's home and what you do is live on crime and shove it into their faces, of course they won't take it kindly with you. So Nigerians should respect their hosts. South Africans should not become too jealous to take on Nigerians unnecessarily.
Indeed. Jide, we have to leave it at this point. Quickly, you want to drop something before
I wish my president the best of deliberations. And God bless Nigeria.
All right. Jide Ologundayo Dufookon, thank you for your time on TVC Breakfast.
To the papers now, see what the headlines are across Nigeria. And I have with me in the studio journalist Dario Dufookon and lawyer Jide Ologun. Gentlemen, nice to see you both.
Thank you.
Very good. Let's start from Daily Trust newspaper this morning. And it says, anxiety in Kano, Sokoto as tribunals decide on Ganduje Tambawal today. Supporters go spiritual, relocate to Abuja. All right, that's what the Daily Trust has. Blueprint is next now, and it talks about the xenophobic attacks and the fallout of it. Buhari, 3 governors and 7 ministers, others off to South Africa later today. Right, from the Blueprint, let's go to Daily Times. And he focuses on free speech. Mixed reactions trail Buhari's threat. Senior lawyers, others caution against gagging Nigerians, and statements is in compliance with the Constitution. I guess my guests will be interested to talk about this as we get along on the program. Now, from there, let's go to the Nigerian News Direct. Buhari disowns third-term campaigner, says he won't amend Constitution. Heads for South Africa with 10 ministers over xenophobia. Right. From there, let's go to the Daily Sun. The Daily Sun talks about Nigeria at 59, and it says, row over Buhari's broadcast. PDP, Falai, Ozekome, others hate the president, and Junaid Ebute, Ngige Mohammed applaud the president on the speech. Right, that's the Daily Sun. Vanguard is the next one we go to right now. It focuses on the economy. It says Buhari's experts, others list options for government. Nigeria must innovate, commit, or die. Soludo is saying this. And mental discipline to execute plans lacking, says Rawani. And no government exists without security of lives and property. Peter Obi is saying this. And no progress without electricity. Gupta, globalization expert, is saying this. That's what you see on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper. Now let's go back to the Daily Times. Gentlemen, when it comes to free speech or freedom of expression or freedom of speech, it is enshrined in the Constitution, which is one of the fundamental human rights that anybody should even know about. The right to express yourself, the right to free speech, and all of that. Now, the president, in his independence broadcast yesterday, talked about the fact that the government will not tolerate any kind of speeches or utterances that would jeopardize national security if he has to be implied in that regard. We see Showere, who is being held, part of what he's been held for, is for insulting the president, as it is said. Now, what do you make of this? Dari, this is your first constituency when it comes to expression and the press. I'd like you to comment on this, because people have the concern that the government could be gagging the press and gagging the people.
Yeah, naturally, I'll be lying up behind those who are calling for caution. Without free press, we may end up not having a country. You cannot compare this era to what we had during the military era. The freedom to speak aids democracy in a way you cannot measure. Because we can speak and speak freely. We can tell the government when they are going wrong. And what happens? Government adjusts. That's democracy being deepened. However, we must also be conscious of national security. I agree with Mr. President that we should run away from species that can cause national disharmony. But my worry is who determines species that are not too good for national security?
Exactly.
It is still the government. So if we give government too much power to
determine that on the behalf of people.
On behalf of the people, it will be dangerous. Let the people determine what is not good.
And government sieves the one that he feels
Let the people
irrelevant.
determine what is not good.
Okay.
I'm not even interested in government sieving because if government is a gatekeeper, they will stop all of us from talking about anything that can hurt them. And we need to tell the government what will hurt the government.
What I'm even saying is let the people just talk.
Once we say
this
is how it goes. Once we say it, from the feedback, from the reaction of the people, both the government and the press would know whether this is good or not. For example, let's use this Showore example. It's a matter in court and was cautious.
Yes.
Showore said, according to his accusers, he is going to bring down the government. According to his accusers. Showore said, revolution now, it is time to drag Buhari out of that place. How many Nigerians came out to say, let us go and drag Buhari? The fact that people did not come out is a way from people saying, no, this is not LD.
That's not the way. Okay.
That's what government should just wait for. Right. The people will know, and they will say, go to social media when he said that. A lot of people came out to say, no, this is not good for Nigeria.
All right.
That is a way to gatekeep.
Okay, let me bring Jide into this now. The point there is that if we have to dissect these issues very critically, why at any point does government become uncomfortable with its citizens making statement or saying whatever that doesn't go their way?
Great question. You see, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that was adopted in 1948 recognizes these fundamental human rights, one of which is freedom of expression. But like Mr. Darius said, there's a limit to what you can express. But when the government becomes so uncomfortable and defensive,
and intolerant.
And intolerant, it means the governance system is not working. You see, a child is born naturally to express. This baby starts crying, seeking for attention. And the moment you pay attention to that child, the child begins to smile. So I don't want the government to go to the extent of clamping down. And some of these rights are interpreted judicially. So how do we position a government that will disrespect the rule of law in the interest of national security? Is the rule of law not the foundation of peace, justice, and equity?
Exactly.
So
which is what government wants.
So your responsibilities to the people are clearly spelled out, and you must fulfill them. And if I don't feel that sense of fulfillment, I must be able to express myself. All right? Because the isolated case of Showore, the government had to start looking for what to even charge him for. What the guy said is that there is a need for a fundamental change.
Yeah, but the issue of Showore, is it really isolated? Agba Jalingo is also one of those
I
who
said
is
for
being
the
held.
purpose of this analysis.
Okay,
and
okay.
let me also, let me expand it. Now, if we are claiming that the people should be careful what they say, I agree with that. What about those in office? In this country, a governor came out to threaten foreign observers that they will return in body bags. What kind of statement is that? In this country, a group came out to threaten the government that Ruga project must be accepted by some states. How do we classify that? In this country, at a time, somebody threatened to soak dogs and baboons in blood. You see, several statements. And I think what is reflecting is the fact that there has been sustained governance failure in Nigeria. Where things work, we speak with love, with joy, with, embracing one another. But when we govern by force, you cannot but have cases like this. So having said that, I just want to caution that both on the governed and the government side, there is a need to go back to the responsibilities of this social contract. Deliver on them, and you have a smooth sail. You don't deliver on them, some of us will complain.
All right. So is a product of a gap or a vacuum between that social contract, the agreements from both sides, the governor, the government, the governed and the government. All right. Thank you very much, Jide Ologun, for coming on the program. Dario Dufo, thank you so much for coming. Thank you.